Thank you, Chuck and Shaw. Good afternoon, everybody. So in order to introduce my guest, I really have to start off first with his wife, who's going to have the privilege of hosting a group at 1700 for the spouses. Mrs. Susan Lapin was an honor graduate with a degree in humanities. She is from New York, so much perhaps to the Chief's consternation, you know what team she is not a fan of. But she's an accomplished teacher, an educator, and even a sailor. More on that. But most proudly, she's married with 7 children and is an avid homeschooler. For indeed, when you hear our guest speaker and get to know his wife later, you'll realize there is scarcely a school out there that could possibly compare to the education that they as loving parents could bring to bear. And it has reaped benefits. And she, along with her husband, are co-hosts of a television show entitled Ancient Jewish Wisdom. Now for Rabbi Daniel Lapin. He's our presenter this afternoon. If I said nothing more than the fact that he was the husband of his wife and the proud father of his 7 accomplished children, that really would suffice. For surely one was his best choice in life and the other his most significant accomplishment. That said, we're inviting him for several other reasons, some minor accomplishments that he has achieved over his time. Number one, there are very few things that we can say in a widely acclaimed manner that something is uniquely American. I'm sure you're all familiar with Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor. Well, Rabbi Lapin is affectionately known as America's rabbi, and that is quite a title. He's an avid voter, and through his various works and accomplishments, he has truly helped, metaphorically, many Americans, Jew and non-Jew alike, navigate the turbulent waters of life's challenges, as well as theology and religion. He's an accomplished author, having written articles and books, and not to play on a bad stereotype, Rabbi, I love this. His book, one of them, is entitled, Thou Shalt Prosper, the 10 Commandments for Making Money. You gotta love it. And there is a single line in his bio, you can read the rest for yourselves, that I think really captures it all. It says that in addition to being an eloquent speaker, he has a method of, quote-unquote, extracting practical life's principles from the Bible, as well as ancient Jewish wisdom, and is able to transmit them in a life-changing and captivating manner, thereby impacting and improving modern-day life for the individual. That is truly significant. But with a background not just in rabbinical study and being a biblical scholar, he has a background in science and business. He has put out CDs, DVDs, articles, books, radio talk show host, as well as a television host, as previously mentioned. He has lectured in academic settings at universities at the highest level, in the corporate settings for many businesses, as well as churches and synagogues throughout our great land, and perhaps least of all, before Congress as a keynote speaker. Without any further ado, most importantly, I consider him a dear personal friend, and to note he was the very first guest speaker who I invited when I was an Army chaplain back in roughly the year 2000 at Fort Lewis, Washington. So with that, and any further ado, Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
With the kind permission of Chaplain Feldenberg, I thought I'd indulge some rabbinic prerogative here and change the topic. I mean, the way I see it, you've been talking sex all week. How much can you do? Or put another way, one can do a great deal, but how much can one talk about it, really? And so I know that I will be anticipating your own enthusiasm and interest when I tell you that the topic of today's talk is going to be the spirituality, the art, and the geography of middle period Etruscan pottery. Well, that didn't go according to plan at all, because conventional wisdom is usually just that. It's conventional and therefore usually false. And conventional wisdom says start with a joke. But the way I see it is, as somebody who really admires the technique, the sheer creativity, and above all, the courage and grit of stand-up comedians, I have yet to see Jim Gaffigan or Jerry Seinfeld begin their stand-up routine with a brief discussion on biblical ethics. And so why on earth would I start with a joke? But the joke itself I'm not going to start with. But humor and laughter is important. There is a reason why in the last 100 years of American culture, over 85% of comedians have been Jewish. It's a huge percentage. To say that it's wildly disproportionate, it goes without saying. Jewish percentage of America's population, about 1.4% perhaps. Over 80% of the comedians Jewish. What's that all about? Now, as Chaplain Felsenberg alluded to, one of my books, is Thou Shalt Prosper, the 10 Commandments for Making Money. That is also part of this discussion, if for no other reason then you'd have to be a blind immigrant from out of Mongolia not to notice that Jews have always been disproportionately good with money. By the way, I know that makes you uncomfortable, but I'm actually allowed to say that. I'm circumcised. You know, it often strikes me that this area may be the only part of all of academia where bigotry gets converted into research by removing a little piece of skin. But yes, Jews have stood out in economic terms. They've also stood out in comedic terms. And finally, as Mark Twain noted in his article at the end of the 19th century, for the Saturday Evening Post, he wrote a story, a piece called Concerning the Jews. And he spoke about Jewish ability with money, and he also spoke about Jewish welfare in the family arena. He spoke about the famous solidity and reliability of Jewish marriages. Well, I wish that that was as true today as it was 100 years ago. And to the extent that it is not as true, matches precisely the extent to which, sadly, a very large proportion of self-identifying American Jews have replaced the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with the God of secular fundamentalism. The resulting damage to both financial success and perhaps more importantly to family success is conspicuous and hard to miss. But humor, why so many comedians Jewish? Well, there are probably a variety of socio-economic reasons for that, but one of them is that we Jews take laughter very seriously. As a matter of fact, the very first born Jew was given the name laughter. His name is Isaac. In Hebrew, that's Yitzchak, and that means laughter. But just as important as his name is the fact that in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, the clustering of topics is very significant, where certain things show up. Now in this case, not only the 5 books of Moses, but all of the Hebrew Bible, over 90% of all references to laughter occur in the chapter concerning Isaac's birth. It's as if the good Lord is saying, hey, today we're going to talk about laughter, and everything you need to know about that is right here. Why is laughter so linked to the very first born Jew? And moreover, why is it that the section concerning the birth, the section of the Torah concerning the birth of Isaac, is read in synagogue on the Jewish New Year? Now, with us, New Year's is not a time to tilt the bottle and put a funny hat on your head. By us, New Year is called head of the year, and Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year, and the relationship between our New Year and the rest of the year is precisely the relationship between the head and the rest of the body. Namely, it is the head that should direct what the body does. And so it is on Rosh Hashanah that the shofar, the ram's horn, is blown for 100 blasts. Now, what may not be so well known is that the musical structure of the blasts, the rhythm and tempo of the musical pattern that is blasted 100 times during the day is the sound of human laughter. That's what it is. If I were to reproduce the sounds, I'm going to make a complete idiot of myself, but at least it'll give you the idea of what it sounds like. That's what the shofar sounds like. You get it? It's all about laughter. Why? Well, I hope some of you remember a cartoonist called Gary Larson. I'd hate for his work to go into obscurity. But he did the most brilliant cartoons all about animals conversing with each other, usually about people. And so you might have seen two cows making some snide but hysterical remark about the farmer. And it was just funny and clever. However, I ask you to imagine for just a moment a world in which animals could indeed laugh. And how funny is Gary Larson now? Not at all. This gives us a clue as to what laughter is all about and why laughter belongs on this holy of holy days in the Jewish calendar. Why it has to be the firstborn Jew is named laughter. Well, you see, the idea is that laughter is what we do when something contradicts an accepted norm. So when a tramp slips on a banana skin and falls on his back, we rush to help him. It's just tragic, it's poignant. But how about when a pompous politician slips on the same banana peel and lands on his back? Hey, it's time for that shofar. It's hilarious. We're laughing so much, nobody's got the energy to help him out. Because it's incongruous. Laughter has to do with incongruity, things that don't fit. In reality, laughter is the defining matrix of a world which is not random and devil may care, but a world in which there is a structure of rules, both physical and spiritual. Laughter affirms and testifies to that existence. And so, for instance, the bulk of jokes, particularly of the less wholesome kind, revolve around sex, bathroom, and religion. Right? A rabbi stepped into a room full. I mean, you can see that that's the start of a good joke. So, yeah, sex, the bathroom, and religion, those constitute the bulk of unwholesome jokes. Why religion? Well, because it is so powerful and so relevant and so present in people's lives, whether they acknowledge that or not, that the notion of mocking it is almost irresistible if you are a certain type of individual, because it's there. Nobody makes jokes about the flat earth society because it's not worth commenting on. It's ridiculous. Anybody in this day and age who thinks the earth is flat, it's tragic, it's not fun. But God is worth joking about. Bathroom? Well, of course. We get that. Everybody knows that bathroom is a thoroughly private affair, that to the extent that we even go out of our way to redefine it. And this struck me with some significance on the first, maybe the first or second day I arrived as an illegal immigrant into the United States of America. Well, the way I looked at it, right, somebody has to be willing to do the job that Americans aren't willing to do. And namely, be an Orthodox Jewish rabbi who loves Christians. So I'm meeting with a group of people, and I still remember we're sitting in a hotel lobby in Manhattan, and a guy gets up and says, and I've never heard this in my life before, he says, "Excuse me, I'm off to the men's room." I think to myself, me too? To me, men's room means sports on a big screen, beer on tap. I'm good, so I jump up and say, "I'll go with you." I didn't even realize the strange looks everybody else was giving, because only women do that. I'll go with you. This was a very rude awakening to a lengthy process of acculturization to the United States of America, and I will tell you, I never made a better decision in my life till I married my wife of becoming an American citizen. She likes to say that I married her for citizenship. This is absolutely not true. I actually achieved citizenship alone, independently myself, a couple of years before I even met her, but she still retains. Men's room. Oh, I'm going to the bathroom. Really? You need a shower? Why? I'm going to the powder room. The mind boggles at that thought. Well, what is that about? Why couldn't you just get up and say, "Hey, let me tell you what I'm going to do now"? Why not? Right? Because we all recognize deep inside of us that God created all the animals and creatures in the world, and then as an entirely separate process, He created the only creature touched by the finger of God, the human being. And one of the prime lessons that emerges from the first couple of chapters of Genesis is something that my mother taught me really, really well. The lesson is that there is a difference between people and animals. And almost everything in a culture that is being driven in the wrong direction is based on the idea that we are nothing but the results of a lengthy process of unaided materialistic evolution that transformed primitive protoplasm into plumbers and proctologists. What's going on here? It's an extraordinary thing. The notion that I am different from an animal today is considered an offensive statement. To which I say, tough luck. It's a reality, I can't help that. And so we do make a difference between the way animals go to the bathroom and the way we go to the bathroom. We do. And we go to great lengths to camouflage the animalistic side of our being. By doing what? Expensive wallpaper, monogrammed towels, in the smallest room of the house where you spend least time. Bars of soap shaped like seashells, really? Yes, absolutely. Very much so. Because that way I can say I'm going to the powder room, or I'm going to the washroom, or where's the men's room? And I can avoid the stark ugliness of animalistic reality. And so for this reason, our conduct with sex is again shaped in such a way and sculpted in order to create as much distinction as possible between us and animals. Animals see and do. And human beings, first of all, they would get engaged and they would do what I think is, since colonial days, is already gone, and that is they used to post banns at the church to say, on such and such a date, Mr. So-and-so intends taking Miss So-and-so as his bride. Because there was this recognition that sex is not private, it is everybody's business. Because what happens to society is very much a function of that society's treatment of relationships between men and women. As a matter of fact, in ancient Jewish wisdom, we go as far as to say that there are only two types of human relationships: sexual and financial, or contract. And the Torah loves contracts. When the people of Ephron just said to Abraham, hey, you don't have to buy a burial field when Sarah died. As an act of friendship, we'll just give it to you. And Abraham said, no, I want to buy it. They said, oh, listen, $300 million for an acre in midtown Hebron. I mean, how important is that, really? Abraham said, thank you for giving me the price, and he wrote out a check there and then. Sex and money, fundamental relationships. What is a sex relationship? It's not necessarily only the person with whom you are enjoying a sexual relationship. That's the most primal, obviously, but it is also everyone to whom you are related because of a sexual relationship. That includes your siblings and your cousins. Sure, because I am here because two grandpas a long time ago took a liking to two grandmas. And that's how I'm here. And Susan, my wife, is here because another two grandpas did the same thing. And our children are here because of the love that Susan and I have shared. So, yes, sexual relationships is another way of saying family relationships. And financial relationships is another way of saying contractual relationships. Now, one of the reasons that ancient Jewish wisdom loves these two kinds of relationships is because they are not flimsy. If any of you have said to yourselves, I really ought to call so-and-so. We were such good friends and I haven't spoken to him or her for the last, could it be 10 years already? If you've ever said that to yourself, then you understand the frailty of friendship. Friends today, maybe tomorrow we're not. And it may not be anything specific. We may have drifted apart, we may have moved apart geographically. Friendships, they are what they are. It's not an accident that nowhere in the 5 books of Moses do you find anybody described as a friend. It's as if God dismisses the entire look, friends are great. You can have friends you're blessed. It's wonderful. But in terms of fundamental human affairs, sex and marriage is the first. And what's so important about that What's so important about that is that it has absolutely nothing to do with love and friendship. Every now and then I raise eyebrows by introducing Susan as my lady friend. I just came across that term recently. I thought it was rather quaint. So, and we get interesting responses. But yeah, marriage has nothing to do with friendship. That may develop, and if it does, you're very fortunate. But marriage it's a commitment. Everybody knows that. And any young woman who is stupid enough to get married because the guy says, I love you, which is just a misspelling of I lust for you, deserves exactly what she gets, which is she's accepted a deal whereby his relationship with her is contingent on his emotions. Anybody checked into the stability of male emotions? They talk about female emotions, my goodness. And so anybody who gets married says, well, he loves me. The net result is when he doesn't love you, you must accept the fact that he goes and marries his secretary or whoever he now loves. If that's what this is all about, he was my best friend. How could he do this to me? Well, because you misunderstood the whole deal. The deal is called a commitment. And like any other contract, it doesn't change. Right? And I mean, we all have had experiences with honorable and amazing business professionals. I mean, I've had it, I've seen it so many times, I know you have as well, where somebody contracts to a sale. I'm going to sell you my land at such and such a price, we'll open escrow, we'll close on this date, and then in the interim, it turns out that information is released, the government is planning a new freeway, the value of it has gone up, and you are waiting for the phone call from the fellow saying, you know what, I'm sorry, but I can't do the deal as we planned. You're expecting it! And nothing, you hear nothing, so you show up on the assigned date to open escrow, and there he is. And you just are absolutely, you say, how wondrous are your works, O Lord, that you created a human being capable of this level of commitment. I would like to make him my friend. That's right. I don't do business with friends. That's sheer folly. But I love making friends out of the people with whom I do business. Marriages that start with love end with law. Marriages that start with law can well end with love. And that's why the Jewish marriage ceremony is remarkably devoid of romance. It sounds much more like finance than romance. It's a set of obligations and commitments and responsibilities from the man to the woman,